if anybody wants a copy of the recording, you can request it and it'll be available to you. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And there should be time to answer any questions that you have or anything that comes up. I'm just excited to do this. I've been wanting to do something like this for a while because at Smith Marion, we've been using Divvy now for, I believe, 2 years. And we've just seen a lot more efficiencies and a lot of ability to kind of find extra time and make things less cumbersome through this free program. And so I'm pretty excited for Dallin to share more about it with you and about how you can, through Divvy, see some time back with your expense management. And so I'm excited. We've been working with Dallin for a while now. He's excellent. And I'm excited for him just kind of share some more information with you guys. Just a little bit of information. Dallin is with Divvy. He helps with all kinds of things like onboarding and training and informational bits. And then I'm with Smith Marion. Many of you have met me before, but I'm the firm administrator. And I also work with our clients on ways that they can become more efficient and productive within their agencies. And so, Dallin, when you're ready, I'll turn it on over to you. I don't know if you want to share your screen or not, but I can.
Yeah. I'll share my screen. I'll walk us through kind of a high level demo of Divvy, so that way we're actually getting a real view of the software.
Okay, perfect.
And you guys can see my screen now, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, really to get started into things, why Divvy? What is Divvy? How do we help? What's kind of the land that we play in? Yes, we're talking about expense management today. But let's kind of even take a couple of steps back and talk a little bit more about what is Divvy, and then we'll understand kind of how we approach these a little bit better. So Divvy, we offer corporate credit cards, and along with our corporate credit cards comes software that can help automate or eliminate a lot of the expense management process altogether. So Divvy, yes, we offer, it's a Visa credit card. We're going to get into the credit card rewards. We're going to get into all of kind of the aspects of the credit card, but really the thing that brings us all here today is really the expense management piece of it. And so that's where I want to talk a little bit more about that. But also even talking about kind of the origins of Divvy as well. So Divvy was founded by a man by the name of Blake Murray. And the reason why he kind of dreamt up Divvy and why this became a thing is because he actually owned a bunch of franchises, and he was having issues looking at real-time financial data. He'd turn to his accountant and say, hey, I need this report. I'm trying to make this business decision, or hey, we need to do this project, and can you get me this report? And the accountant would say, I would love to get you that report. Can you get me XYZ information? And there was all these kind of this back and forth, and really a delayed experience in getting the information he needed to make business decisions. And so really he got frustrated, and he realized it was never his accountant that was the issue, but it was really the tools that were provided to kind of both parties that provided this kind of delay in information. So Blake really decided, hey, you know what, there's got to be a better way. Of course, here we are today with this better way. And so what he found was the major issue a lot of times was the credit cards themselves, because every time himself or a team member would swipe a credit card, there would be about a 30-day delay, or whenever the credit card statement would come out, that's when he'd have some true understanding of those expenses and would then know the reporting of those, how to budget better, things like that. And so that's how kind of full circle how the credit card aspect married to our software is providing a much more kind of holistic experience. And while I understand you're not in kind of the franchise space, a lot of these issues will apply to you as well. So now jumping into things. Okay, so we understand that Divvy is a Visa, a corporate credit card. But let's talk a little bit more about the software and how it can kind of revamp your experience in employee experiences. So first, I'm going to jump into the mobile app. And this is going to be a huge help for any spender that's in the organization. This is focused specifically on in-person spending. So we're going to talk about the online purchases and the subscription type charges here in just a minute. But for anybody that's swiping there at a cash register or whatever it is, this is going to be more or less their experience. So what happens is every time one of those people swipes their card, they also have access to the mobile app, by the way. The mobile app is going to be kind of the driving force behind automating or eliminating expense reports. So they swipe their card, within 10 seconds, they're going to get a notification of that transaction that it went through. And that transaction is going to look much like this, where we can see, how we need to categorize it. We can see if we need to attach a receipt. Let's see here. Might need to reboot this one. There we go. Yep, so here it is. So every time somebody spends, again, within 10 seconds, they're getting a notification that looks just like this. So that notification is going to prompt them to complete some details. It's going to help everybody else down the line in understanding what this expense was for, and if it was appropriately budgeted for, what project it goes against, and even maybe a location or an address that we want to link these charges to. So what's going to happen is they get this notification, and of course we want a receipt, so they can take a picture of that receipt. That will attach to the transaction and ultimately flow all the way through to the accounting software. They can also categorize transactions, or we can build out kind of a custom list here that will more appropriately fit your organization. We're likely going to be tracking classes or projects in this, so we can have those drop downs as well. That's a simple pick list that they choose from, and they're done. So from spending to expense report completed, really the idea here is that's less than 30 seconds, rather than the typical experience being, hey, I'm going to wait until the end of the month to complete all my expenses, which puts a lot of pressure on the finance team because they don't have a lot of that missing information until the end of the month. And then they're trying to close the books at the end of the month, bleeding into the following month sort of scenario. So rather than perpetuating that issue, if we can help people get all this information to the finance team in real time, then we've kind of got a flywheel effect going where information is being provided in real time. Therefore, reporting and everything else that follows can be more appropriately given and a little bit more accurate. So now let me kind of play devil's advocate against myself for a second, because I understand that while this is the ideal state, somebody swipes their card and they're met with this notification and they fill this out in real time right there at the cash register. While that might be the case for many employees, there's going to be at least a few that might disregard that notification, whether it's accidentally or maliciously. They just don't want to do it. So how do we help in that regard? So we will send a follow-up notification every 3 days until they get it done. So maybe they had just forgotten. That's okay. We're going to keep reminding them until it's done, so that it's still not an issue at the end of the month. We're still going to get to it sooner than we would have before. This also helps strengthen some relationships by removing the need for people to continually follow up with a said person and make some people upset, or put weird undue pressure on someone to continually follow up for a receipt or how to categorize a transaction. We want to remove that and, hey, let the system do the work so nobody's feelings are getting in the way. So that's how we're going to track a lot of that information. And then there's a lot of automation pieces that we can put in place as well. If we want to auto categorize things if if we have every time somebody goes to Home Depot, we know it's for materials and things like that. We can auto categorize those and make your life a little bit easier as well. So even as a spender, you don't have to always be jumping in here and sorting through a list of what I think this charge is for. We'll kind of help in that regard. Now let's jump into a little bit of the information flow. Unless Hannah, is there anything that I missed on this mobile app experience that you feel I ought to highlight before I move on to this?
Well, one thing that I really love is, and I'm sure you'll talk about this later, but one thing that I love is when you assign these credit cards, you can assign spend limits. And so it gives you so much control over how much each person is able to use. And you can also change those spend limits at any time. And so I've had team members where I sent them to the grocery store and they ended up needing more than what was in their budget. And all they had to do was request additional funds, and in real time I can approve those funds and they immediately get those. Oftentimes they just call me, and that's fine too, because I can very easily authorize those funds even if they call me. But it's nice knowing that it's so easy to change their budget at any time, so that I'm not so worried about giving out these credit cards, because I know that I have like spend control over them, as well as not being worried about giving someone too little, because again, it's so easy to adjust those funds at any time. It literally takes 30 seconds.
Yeah, let's actually walk through that experience a little bit further. So I showed you here as she was talking about that approval workflow, maybe somebody requesting funds, or even from maybe an admin's perspective or Hannah's perspective. Let's show you what that looks like to approve of those. So even from your mobile app, maybe you're not sitting at a computer, great. From your mobile app, you can jump in here and approve of those requests for dollars, or you can deny and change the amount. But before we're talking about approvals and denials, let me actually show you the other major piece that Hannah was talking about. And we're going to talk about the control aspect of the credit cards. So if I jump into here, so a lot of times we actually refer to the control aspect as budgets. This doesn't necessarily have to coincide with how you're already thinking about budgets, but these for Divvy is more so approval workflows. So this is how you can start to feel a little bit more comfortable issuing cards to people that maybe in the past you might not have. Maybe you're doing a little bit of card sharing today, where somebody comes to you, hey, I need to go buy XYZ. Okay, yep, here's my card. Bring me the receipt when you're done. Yada, yada, yada. I know you're a responsible person, right? So we want to eliminate that issue by issuing cards to everybody that would ever need to spend on behalf of the organization. But then this is how we can reduce liability, decrease risk, but also improve accountability. So what we're gonna do here is we can create a budget for anything. You name it what you will, whether it's a certain project or location or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You name it whatever you want to. And what I'm going to do is we're going to jump into this budget. And you can see that there are a few people added to this budget. So these are the only team members that are authorized to spend on behalf of this budget. So they're the only ones that are seeing this. Now, on the right-hand side, we're seeing that some people have $500, and these two that are retired or moved on from this budget have $0. Right now, how I have the budget set up is everybody is spending from a pot. So everybody has equal access to that $500 credit limit or that $500 budget. Now, if I want to jump in here and change these budget settings and say, you know what, I only want the owner of the budget to have full access, what you're going to see is this Matt Sullivan. He's wearing a crown. And that's because when I was setting up this budget, I designated him as the budget owner. So he has complete authority over the $500. And you can see nobody else has any money. So now what he can do is he can jump in and say, hey, Camden, I know you're going to need $90 for XYZ. Scott, I know you're going to need $150. Now, I'm playing with these small dollar amounts as my budget's only $500. But as I saved those changes, both Camden and Scott were notified in an instant that their credit limit was increased to $150. Zachary Hines is still left at $0. So even if he goes and tries to swipe his card as many times as he can, no matter where it is, it's going to decline because he has $0 of credit available to him, whereas these others have 150, 90, and 260. So now what I showed you was a one-time in-month type of approval workflow where I said, hey, I want to give you just $90 just this 1 month. Now, if I wanted to kind of set it and forget it to remove a little bit of administrative burden, well, I could just change these funds for people and say, hey, Camden, I want to make sure that your new assigned dollar amount is today and all future days.
Speaking.
So, yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Right.
Oh, sorry, was that a question? Okay.
Sorry, say that again.
Yes, Charles, did you have a question?
Right. Yes, I didn't understand. Will he be there? Okay, I understand now.
Oh, sorry, getting a little bit of that personal phone call, but that's okay. So going back to this budget experience so Camden was assigned $90, but you'll notice I had assigned that dollar amount just for this. In this budget scenario, it's daily. So this budget replenishes on a daily basis because this is our lunch budget. So, okay, we're sending lunch to the team every day. But maybe this budget was set up on monthly or quarterly or annual. We can change how we want to deal with those budgets and how often we want them to replenish. Again, in this scenario, it is replenishing on a daily basis. So what I'm going to say is, hey, I actually don't want you to have $90 daily. That's a lot for lunch. I'm going to give you maybe $20 a day for lunch, and I'm going to set it for today and all future days. And I can even set an expiration date on these funds. So this is going to keep replenishing until maybe just the end of the month. So now thinking about it in your terms and how you might use the budget, this might be maybe not lunch, but this might be other aspects that, again, maybe we want to set it and forget it of who has access to what funds for a designated amount of time, if that's appropriate, on a monthly basis, a daily, a weekly, so that we are keeping a lot of control on the cards, which helps us feel more comfortable actually issuing cards to people that in the past we might not have. So that's walking through spend controls a little bit deeper there. Now, I also have a lot of control over how people can spend those funds. So if I wanted to jump in here and say, I want to block certain merchants. So I want to make sure that nobody can buy alcohol or spend on entertainment from these budgets. I can do something like that. Or I can jump in and say, hey, I'm going to select, you know what, all budgets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to block certain categories. And I can say, okay, I don't want them at alcohol or bars. And I don't want them spending on gambling. And you know what? I don't want them spending on landscaping either. As silly as that may sound, or maybe the opposite. Maybe I only want them spending on landscaping and fuel and gas, things like that. Well, I can build out these merchant controls so I can really control how the cards are able to spend on certain things. Again, helping me feel a little bit more comfortable issuing cards to those that it would be convenient if they held a card. Now, a lot of what I just showed you there, I want to also emphasize that these things are optional. So some people jump into this and they think, hey, I really just need a basic fill in the blank. You know, I just love the mobile app experience where I can just jump in and categorize and do the receipt piece. And I don't want to introduce any other confusion or any other workload to me or my team. that is totally fine. We can take on kind of the buffet effect where you can pick and choose the aspects that you want to use. And if all that is the mobile app, that's totally fine. There's other people in here that are going to want to lean in and say, hey, you know what? I love the budgets. I love controlling who can spend what. I love the mobile app. And so they can have their experience at the buffet as well. So everything I'm showing you, don't feel like I'm communicating that you have to use all these aspects, but these are possibilities to you. So now back to budgets for just a second here. We're going to show you some trend lines. Right now, we're taking a look at spend. So, okay, how much of the budget is spent? How much is available to spend? Things like that. So what we'll do is we'll show you trend lines so you can more appropriately plan out those budgets. But then also, if I jump into the mobile app, you can see that this person, their personalized experience, is showing that they have access to this much budget. So they can better prepare and plan on how they're going to use their budget. So as they spend, obviously this will decrease. Their credit limit, their available credit will shrink. And once they hit their budget limit, they are cut off from further spending, which leads us back to that experience that Hannah talked about in approval workflows. Once somebody runs out of money, like in this scenario, they run out of money and maybe they're not quite done with what you sent them out to do, then they can request funds from that pre-designated person to approve or deny requests, things like that. Hannah, am I missing anything on budgets that you feel would be important to emphasize?
I don't think so. One recommendation just that I have is it can be so helpful to set budgets up by department. So you could have a maintenance budget, you could have like an admin budget. You could even have cards for your board members for when they go to conferences. So you could have a board budget. And that gives you the ability to kind of assign the appropriate owner to each one. And that owner is the one who has the control over the spending. They have the control over approving the expenses. And so that can be some way that can be really, really helpful. But again, you can create the budgets any way that you want to create them. So it's not something that you are stuck in doing it one way. You can really be flexible in how you create those budgets. Or you could go, I'm a small agency. I don't need a bunch of budgets. Can I just have one? Absolutely. You could have one agency budget and you could allocate spend to each person appropriately. So sometimes I think when people are implementing, sometimes they kind of get overwhelmed by the options, but always like keeping it simple can sometimes like be the best way. So know that there's a lot of customization, but it also doesn't have to be daunting.
And speaking to that a little bit, let's talk about implementation, onboarding, and training. I know this is kind of midway through, so I'm going to show you a couple more things here. But while it's top of mind, let's talk about implementation, onboarding, and that. So what we'll do is once you get set up, which we're going to walk through that experience as well. It's pretty simple, but we have the account built, and we can meet with Hannah and her team to talk a little bit more about the integration with your accounting software. Or maybe you want to leave Hannah and her team out of it. Maybe you know, heaven forbid, you're going a different route for your accounting. That's okay. We can walk you through the implementation and onboarding aspect there. The integration is very simple. We integrate with QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, Sage Intacct, NetSuite. You can see them here. If you are using Slack for anything, we can integrate with Slack for convenient approval workflows, and then Travel Perk for anybody that's doing a lot of travel. So we're gonna sync directly with your accounting software. So we're gonna pull in your chart of accounts. We're gonna pull in any classes that you're tracking, anything like that. And the mapping of that is set up 90% of the way as we pull it all in. And then once we are able to pull it in, or once you log into your accounting software and it gets pulled in, then what we can do, and usually this is done with your accountant. So again, not something that you need to worry about, but we would jump in here and we would actually configure the chart of accounts for you. So, or I should say with you or with somebody from the team. This is the full chart of accounts it's pulling in from your accounting software. This is what it's looking like in Divvy. So we can start to rename things in Divvy to make sure it makes sense to your team. When they're spending, they're clicking on familiar words that might be accounting jargon that Hannah's team wants to know. And so what we can do, we can have that the nomenclature, the more familiar words for your team assigned here, and make sure it's appropriately mapping in your accounting software. So the integration is awesome. It's going to sync on a nightly basis. So again, your accountant is going to be receiving this information daily. And let's actually talk through that information a little bit
What
more.
about Dallin? For many of our clients, they're using Inspire, they're using other software that's not available as an integration. Isn't there a way to export an Excel that imports into the software?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. So we have a ton of clients that are using Divvy that we don't integrate with their accounting software. And how we would go about that is we actually have an export button right here where you can export to CSV, and then you can just upload that CSV into whatever software that you're using. Now, also, even before I'd have you do that, let me show you another couple of key pieces that will make your life easier in that export. So what we'll do is these are all the transactions that people are spending, and we can see a status here. Some transactions are incomplete, some are approved, some are denied, upcoming approval. We have a whole bunch of different statuses of transactions. Well, what does that mean? So all these incomplete transactions, I mean, common sense, they're incomplete. Zachary Hines, he's the culprit here. He is not categorizing these transactions. He is not attaching receipts, things like that. So he's continually getting reminded to do so. As an admin, I do have the ability to jump in and do it for him. If I needed to jump in and categorize these, or maybe he emailed me the receipt, and so I'm going to go and attach it to his transaction in here. By the way, this is a great way to handle all of those, from your desk spending moments. I talked about in-person spending with the mobile app. From the desk spending, you can do that same workflow right here. As you click on those transactions, it pulls up all those details, and you can start to categorize or classify, write some notes in here, attach your receipt. You can drag and drop your receipt in here, or just forward the email to receipts@divvypay.com, and we will auto attach it to the right transaction. So that's how you can manage those expenses. Now, once that's completed, then if we are integrated with your accounting software, it'll sync on a nightly basis. If we're not, that's okay. What we would do is you can do some click and highlight all sort of scenarios. But what I would do is I'd actually apply a filter. And we can say completion status. I want to kick over all completed transactions with, maybe I want to mark it as reviewed. Maybe I have all these filters that I could apply. Now, as I apply those filters, then great. I want to highlight all those, and I want to do a CSV download of just those transactions, so that everything hitting the accounting software or everything hitting the other software that you're using is clean, up to date, and ready to go on that. I can also export even just the receipts if for whatever reason I needed that. Let's talk about audit proofing the organization as well. So I get a lot of questions around, well, what happens if an auditor needs to have access to things, yada, yada, yada. How can I export files for them? Well, rather than that, we would just add them as a user in Divvy because we have an audit profile. So this is going to kill a couple birds with one stone sort of thing here. So let's talk about setting up a user, permissions of that user, and how we can manage that whole experience. So if we want to set up an auditor, we're just going to get them auditor access. So they can't mess with anything, but they have access to click and see approval history and the receipts and transactions coded, things like that. They can see that whole workflow. Now, maybe we want to set up an admin or a bookkeeper, or maybe just a member. Well, what information is required there? First name, last name, email, date of birth, phone number. If you want us to text them a link to download the mobile app, I highly suggest it. And then from there, really, you choose if you want us to ship them a card, And if you do want us to ship them a card, how quickly you want them to get it. And this is the only area in which Divvy would charge you any money. Because I think that's important to note as well. Divvy is completely free. How does that make sense? How do we make money? How do we stay in business? So we make money like the banks. Every time you're swiping your card, there's interchange there. Home Depot is paying 2 to 3% to accept a credit card. We are collecting that interchange, a piece of that 2 to 3%. And so that's how we are able to keep this whole experience free, is we are investing in the whole experience to capture some of that credit card expense from the big players like American Express or Capital One or whoever it be. So that's how it's free. And again, this is the only area in which we would charge you any money, is if you want us to expedite the shipping of cards, we allow you to cover that expedited rate. So that's how you go ahead and set up a person. Heaven forbid there's turnover in positions. It's just as easy to jump in here and delete a person. Don't worry about recouping or capturing that credit card back from the employee that may or may not be disgruntled. Don't worry about it. You just delete the person. They're pulled from access to any funds, access to any budgets, and the full audit history of everything that they have done is also in here as well. So to talk a little bit further about the audit history as well, if I jump into any budget, click on these 3 little dots, and I want to view budget history, I can see everything that has been done in this budget and by who. I can also apply filters. So maybe all I want to see is what Goggin has done and date range. Then I can view history by that. So a lot of filters there. Easily accessible information. And of course, that's only accessible to admins. So we've covered adding people. We've covered budgets. Really briefly, let's cover reimbursements. Somebody forgets their Divvy card, or for whatever reason they're not using it, they can submit for reimbursement. And we can allow for reimbursement for mileage, or we can allow for reimbursement for expenses. Regardless, whatever option they choose, you can set up the workflow that you want them to complete in order to be reimbursed. So, okay, they need to add in some details here. And once completed, then they can request for reimbursement. It'll go through an approval workflow. And then once approved, we can ACH them that reimbursement if you want us to, where we can ACH from organization bank account to employee's bank account. Or if you already have a workflow that you like and that you enjoy going through for reimbursements today, you can stick with that process, and you can even just use this as the approval workflow. So yeah, we can handle those reimbursements.
Yeah, so what we do at Smith Marion is we have our employees set up their bank account so that when they put in the request for reimbursement and we approve it, it just gets ACH directly to their bank account. And that's really nice because in the past, we only did reimbursements twice a month at payday. But now employees can submit their reimbursements anytime during the month. And so even though they have to wait for the ACH to go through, which it can depend on how long. Sometimes employees feel like it's a long time if they do it like right before a holiday, because you have the weekend and you have the holiday and all of that. They still get it faster because they're not having to wait for each pay period.
And the ACH is a standard 3 to 5 business days. So now I'm going to show you 2 more aspects of Divvy before we just open it up to any questions that you have. I'm going to show you virtual cards, and then we're going to cover the rewards aspect of the credit card. So virtual cards. Some of you may or may not be familiar with virtual cards. Divvy takes virtual cards to a whole new level. So if you've used a virtual card with any other credit card out there, let me build on that knowledge even a little bit more. So with Divvy, we highly suggest that any recurring expense, whether it's a recurring software subscription or whether it's a utility bill, whatever it is, if it's a recurring bill, put it on its own separate credit card, because there's a lot of automations that we can put in place. It also protects you a little bit more. So we can create a card, and let's name this one Verizon. If I want to pull this from a specific budget, I can. So maybe I do a recurring subscription budget, and maybe our monthly bill is $300. Wouldn't that be nice? So $300 a month, I'm setting this card up. So every month it's going to replenish with $300. And I'm going to say that every time this card is run, then I want it to auto categorize as cell phone. And I want to also auto attach to my office location and classify as whatever, attach a project, right? So now you're kind of getting the idea that we can really attach a whole lot of information here if we want to, where I can automate a lot of these recurring subscription charges. But then what happens is as I create this card, I have a unique 16-digit card number with all the details here that I can take a look at. I would provide these details to my vendor, and they can keep that card on file. Now, what's nice is no other vendor is going to have access to this card. Why do you care? Why is that important? Well, I've limited this card to $300. So no vendor can price hike me. They can never double charge me. If ever there's fraud, I know exactly who the culprit is, and it didn't affect any other vendor or any other person. I can just as easily delete this card, and it didn't affect any other vendor. And it takes 15 seconds to set up a new card to get that going for that vendor again. So that's a great way of kind of managing subscription or recurring charges. It's also a great way to look at those and visualize where all the funds are going by what spend type if you needed to. Some people take that approach of one card per vendor. Some people believe that's a lot of work to set up. So instead they do one card as a subscription kind of catch all. And that's okay as well. That's fine. But there's a lot of things that we can do with these virtual cards. Now let's talk about credit card rewards and some reporting briefly as well. So let me show you this reporting. So if ever you have curiosities of where all the money's going or who is spending all the money, right now we're looking at a trailing 12. We can see where all the money is going by merchant. We can see who is spending all the money. And if we wanted to dive into any details of these transactions, we could. We can view all of just his transactions. So really quick dynamic reporting that lets a curious mind learn more about their spending habits. We can also add tabs of anything else that you're tracking. So reporting can be pretty robust. Now let's talk about credit card rewards. So Divvy, from the beginning, we understood that there was going to be really an important barrier to entry. The barrier to entry being credit card rewards. We knew American Express was kind of viewed as a top tier reward structure. We knew Capital One had some really awesome rewards. And we understand that a lot of people are tied to their credit cards, not because of the experience that they have, but a lot of times because the rewards that they feel they're getting. And so we came into the industry knowing that. So we came out guns a-blazing, swinging for the fences. We're ready to knock it out of the park with rewards. So we're pretty comparable to that of an American Express. Now you can redeem rewards for cashback, statement credits, gift cards, travel rewards, and to even just be explicit on the cash or the point to dollar value. It typically falls between 0.5% and 1.5% cashback. I can show you how to maximize the 1.5% cashback. So what we do and why that varies is based on how you spend the money. So if you're spending a lot on software subscriptions, if you're spending a lot on hotels and flights, things like that, just like an American Express or Capital One, we have those multiplier categories. But regardless of multiplier categories, how you're going to maximize your rewards is based on payoff cycle. So if you pay your credit card off once a month, that's totally fine. You can do that with Divvy. That's okay. You can just set up an auto pay date And that can be once a month, and that's great. That's how you minimize rewards. How you maximize in turn would then be, you can set up a bi-monthly, you can set up a weekly, or you can even do a prepaid model where if you wanted to prepay the card, that's how you can maximize rewards. So I gave quite the range of 0.5% to 1.5% cash back. I feel confident that I can bare minimum get you guys in the middle of that range at 1%. But there's a world in which there's possibilities. We have gotten people up to 2.25% cash back. So if rewards is your issue, don't let it be. Let's have a proactive conversation about it, and let's see if we can get you there. But I'm confident that we can match or beat your reward structure. Now, also, please include in here the value of the software, the experience, as Divvy is completely free. So now I know we've got just a couple of minutes, but I want to open it up to questions if there are any. And if not, that's okay. We can close. Let me walk through the experience of getting started, of that whole experience as well. So in order to get started with Divvy, it's pretty simple. I have a specific link for anybody listening to this webinar. I have a specific link for you to fill out a credit application. We're going to get you some additional benefits through Hannah's team. You get a 10% increase in credit card rewards. That's not a 10% bump of now you're getting 11.5% cash back. No. It's a 10% bump on the credit card rewards. You also get access to premium customer support, onboarding support, and that. So I will have a specific link to a credit application for you. Please reach out to Hannah or myself. My email is Dallen, DALLEN .Ashby, ASHBY, at hq.bill.com. So feel free to send me a quick email, and I can get you access to that link. Or again, reach out to Hannah's team for that. So you fill out the credit application. Credit application shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes. Really, it should probably take you between 5 and 7 minutes to complete. Once it's completed, it takes us about 3 business days to get you through underwriting. Once you're through underwriting, I can have your account set up that same day. And as we have that account set up, then it's just onboarding implementation that. So that can be as long or as short as you want. Typically, onboarding and implementation is 2 30-minute phone calls. It's pretty short and sweet. So we don't want to get you too involved with too many crazy processes. It just doesn't make sense. But onboarding is typically 2 30-minute phone calls. Now, let's see. Other aspects of this that I typically get questions about. Underwriting. How do we do underwriting? We have a myriad of options. Our preferred setup, I don't even know if it's fair to say preferred, but from an underwriting perspective, what our underwriters like to see is a minimum of 3 years in business and at least 500K in revenue. And that is pretty much it. We do base this off of your business credit. So if you've got more than that and you need a much larger of a line, that's great. If you need over $150,000 a month, then we ask for full financial statements and things like that, maybe tax returns. But up until that point, it's pretty light work.
What about,
unless you go ahead.
Sorry. Dallen, because the housing authorities don't have a requirement to file a tax return, so
that's right.
A nonprofit, but would there be an ability for them to provide financial statements in lieu of that? Okay.
Yep, for sure. Great question. And let's see, I'm thinking about some other scenarios there. So let me just cater to a worst case scenario for just a second and how we can get through that. So let's say you fill out the credit application and you don't get underwritten for what you wanted. Maybe a worst case scenario. That's okay. Reach out to me. And well, first, I want to be involved with the underwriting of any of y'all. So if any of y'all fill out the credit application, I want to be involved and keep my eyes on it to make sure you get through successfully. But again, heaven forbid you get underwritten for less than you hoped for. I'm happy to go through and review it with you as well and try to create a story for our underwriters and see if we can get you more of a credit limit or a credit bump, or at least have kind of a plan of action of how and when we're going to get that increased. While we are great with underwriting and we love to get people exactly what they're asking for and even more, sometimes it is the case that we get you less than you were hoping for. So just reach out and happy to get you taken care of. Anything else before we wrap up? If not, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here with us. I'm excited to work with you. And if you have any questions outside of this, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer, happy to jump on a call with you or trade emails. Either way is fine. So.
Thank you so much, Dallin. I appreciate your time today. Thanks for jumping on and taking the time. And thank you, everybody else. I hope you have a wonderful week. And I appreciate you all prioritizing us right after the long weekend.
Yes.
If anybody needs a copy of the recording or any of the information, you can shoot me an email. I'd be happy to get that over to you. Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.